Please remain standing as we proceed to light the ceremonial oil lamp. To begin with, we would like to call upon the principal of the Overseas School of Colombo, Mr. Phil Jocelyn.
Our chief guest, Dr. Hans Vijay Surya. The secondary school principal, Ms. Claire McQuillan.
The Secretariat of Comun 2018. And finally, the Comun Faculty Advisor, Ms. Jasmine Bhattacharjee.
A big thank you goes out to our esteemed guests. Please make your way to the front row.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the national anthem.
Sri Lanka.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats.
My name is Pankari Kaptial.
My name is Manet Kulathunga, and we will be your hosts for today.
I would now like to call upon the President of the General Assemblies of Comun 2018, Mitsaka Tilakaratna, to deliver the welcome address.
Good morning, Chief Guest, Dr. Hans Vijay, CEO of the South Asian region of the Axiata Group, Principal of the Overseas School of Colombo, Mr. Phil Jocelyn, Head of the Secondary School, Ms. Claire McQuillan, sponsors, EXCO members, delegates, admins, ladies and gentlemen. As a PGA for this year, it is with utmost pride and honor that I welcome all of you to Colombo Model United Nations 2018. We're delighted to have you here to participate and share experiences at the 24th session of Comun. For the first time in many years, with the participation of 400 individuals from both national and international schools, we have delegates from not all over Sri Lanka, but from all over the world, namely from India, Oman and Maldives, which we consider as a milestone for this year's Comun. As the 24th session commences under the theme of reinvigorating humanitarianism, we wish to achieve a number of things. As the basis of the theme suggests, we as Comun would want to give life again to what makes us human. Necessarily, it's a twofold approach for immuners out there. Firstly, as a teenager, we'd expect our delegates to be aware of world affairs that's fabricated under the domestic media. And international, think of ways as to how they can influence these domestic and international affairs as a leader. Secondly, as the United Nations has begun a strategy of formulating long-standing policies with the aim of building a sustainable tomorrow, we'd like our delegates to step up as leaders who propose solutions that would change the quality of life of the generations to come. As an extension to this year we've formulated topics that's never been discussed in the immune arena before. Starting off with, from the Rohingya Muslim crisis, the UN peacekeeping agenda, to fighting drugs and crime, to debating about the legality of the war on terror, and simulating futuristic committees. We've covered all aspects of debate. Further, we provided delegates interesting avenues such as economics, security, public policy, and many more to showcase their skills. I believe it's now time for us as an EXCO to reap the benefits of mentoring this delegate pool for the past 3 months or so. One thing that I'd like to mention about my EXCO experience is the amazing executive committee that I'm blessed with. May it be the best delegate from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, may it be the king of DISEC, may it be the best security delegate of our generation. I have them all in my executive committee. They've not only given me the opportunity to brag about my EXCO, but they've also given me the opportunity to simulate committees that hasn't been simulated in an MUN arena in a while. Namely the International Court of Justice, the Futuristic Economic and Social Council, the Futuristic Security Council. Not only for the first time in Comun, but for the first time in Sri Lanka, we've managed to simulate 2 futuristic committees in one MUN conference, which is a massive milestone for our very organization. Something that I'm very excited about this year's Comun as PGA is the General Assembly crisis. It's truly something that you all have never seen before in an MUN conference in Sri Lanka. On the 11th of March, we'll see 290 young leaders thinking on their feet, debating between multiple priorities to push the national agendas and save the world. I hope the delegates from the General Assemblies enjoy this experience and show their best face on the 3rd day of conference. Last but not least, I wish all the delegates the very best of luck. I hope they make the most out of this conference and come off as an experienced set of delegates who would fill in the seats of leaders in the future. Signing off, I'd like to end with a quote from Tony Robbins, a motivational speaker. When all is said and done, what will be your legacy? Delegates, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. We now have our official theme video for Comun 2018. Sit back and enjoy.
We would now like to call upon Ms. Claire McQuillan, the principal of the secondary school at OSC, to welcome all the delegates and our esteemed guests.
Guests, delegates, I'm delighted to welcome all of you to this year's Comun Conference at the Overseas School of Colombo. This year's theme of reinvigorating humanitarianism seems to echo a general sense of concern that our world politics lacks a humanitarian approach at present. The UN has a commitment to defending human rights, and so members have a mandate to support the vulnerable, both at home and overseas. All too often, member states struggle with their global versus their local responsibilities, and so it is apt to consider the reinvigoration of the approach to these pledges. Countries need to direct new energy into developing a coherence between politics and the promotion of human welfare, taking both a responsive and a proactive approach in supporting troubled areas. I trust that the delegates here today will embrace the opportunity to explore the challenges presented in these debates through a lens of humanitarianism and to seek new solutions in which countries may effect positive change. Today we have delegates from age 12 through 22, many of those older members with years of experience in the process of MUN debate. Whilst there is, of course, a competitive piece to this event, over the course of the previous months, schools have come together to share their knowledge and learn from one another through the practice debates. New friendships have been created, and I have seen a great sense of camaraderie and support between the schools present. When I look out at the delegates present here today, I see young people who've learnt the skills of political debate, who are inspired, who are inspired to discuss how to make a better world, and who one day may bring those skills to the table of Sri Lankan politics. I hope so. Every country represented here today needs young people to join the political landscape, who bring a fresh response to existing issues and a new way to tackle the challenges that present themselves. I should like to thank the Executive Committee of Comun 2018 for all their work in leading up to and including this final event. They have worked hard to create what I am sure you will agree has been a superbly organised set of practice debates, and we look forward to this weekend's final sessions and celebrations enormously. Thanks should also go to our faculty advisor from the Overseas School of Colombo, Ms. Jasmine Bhattacharjee, who has supported the committee throughout their Comun experience. I wish you all a wonderful conference and hope you enjoy your final debates of this academic year. I should now like to introduce our guest speaker for today. Dr. Hans Vijay Surya is the Regional CEO of the South Asian region of the Exeter Group, Asia's second largest telecommunications company. Until 2016, he was also the Group Chief Executive of Dialog, Sri Lanka's largest mobile communications provider. He is a founder, CEO of Exeter Digital Services, the pan-region digital services arm of the Exeter Group. Dr. Vijay Surya was also named Sri Lankan of the Year in 2008 by local business journal LMD. He was educated at St Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia, Sri Lanka, graduated from the University of Cambridge in 1989 with a degree in electrical and electronic engineering. He later obtained his PhD in digital mobile communications from the University of Bristol. A chartered engineer and fellow of the Institution of Engineering and Technology, UK, Dr. Vijay Surya also holds an MBA from the University of Warwick. He serves as director of several of the Exeter Group companies in the region and is also a member of the board of directors of John Keel's Holdings. Part of the Sri Lankan Institute of Nanotechnology and a Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. He is the past chairman of GSM Asia Pacific, the regional group, and has been included in the 100 Roll of Honour for his contribution to Asia Pacific telecommunication industry. A past chairman of the Arthur C. Clarke Institute for Modern Technologies, he is a very busy man and has also served on the boards of Communication and Information Technology for Sri Lanka and the Institute of Information Technology. He has published on the subject of digital mobile communications, including research papers in publications of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, USA, the Royal Society, and the Institute of Electrical Engineers, UK. Ladies and gentlemen, delegates, we're enormously proud to welcome Dr. Vijay Surya to speak with us today. Thank you.
Iboan, and a very good morning, Mr. Phil Johnson, Ms. McKinnon, President and members of the Executive Committee, distinguished guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed an honor and distinct privilege to be invited here for the opening of Comun 2018. In fact, I feel distinctly undeserving of this honor, and I hope I could share with you a few thoughts and ideas, insights, which might be helpful in your debate in the days to come. It is said that we live in exponential times. Why exponential? For those of you who are mathematicians would know very clearly what exponential means. It's a non-linear, rocket-like trajectory of movement and of change. So when we say we live in exponential times, we're actually referring to the speed of change. Change has been a construct, a fact of life ever since the beginning of humanity. The invention of the wheel, later on the industrial revolutions, various forms of change which have brought us to where we are today. But what has changed over time is the speed of change. And I think what is exponential today is that the ground on which we stand, the assumptions and the realities around us are changing so fast that even knowledge becomes obsolete in just a few years. So what remains then is humanity. And I think this stark reality is becoming more and more evident and more important to the younger and younger generations of future leaders. What I studied in university may have been useful to me for just maybe 10 years. But let me assure you that what you study today or what you've accumulated as knowledge will become obsolete and not useful or even relevant in just a couple of years. That's the speed of change. So how is it relevant to the discussion? As you would have heard, I come from a technology background. So I feel what I can impart to you is my view on the role that technology plays in the sphere of humanitarianism. The Sustainable Development Goals, which I'm sure you're all very much anchored on, are reflective of the challenges our world faces today, in particular with respect to inequality or asymmetry, as we would call it. The development goals are reflective of the fact that this world, not only is it burdened with various forms of humanitarian crisis, natural disasters, man-made disasters, conflict, epidemics, suffering of one sort or the other, but very broadly speaking also very stark asymmetries, whether they be in relation to knowledge, in relation to the access to education, access to health, access to basic food, water, and hygiene, and also asymmetries with respect to the access to commerce, to finance, to participate in national and global economies. And while there are these asymmetries, the world that you are heading out to reshape and to rewrite can never spin at the speed that it should, because maybe half, maybe quarter of its population is disadvantaged relative to the rest. And you could think of it as a great mountain of water or a mass of water on one side of a dam and just a trickle on the other side. So this is an asymmetric. And what happens when a crack develops in that dam? Water starts trickling a little faster, and then the entire construct will collapse. Now that's a doomsday scenario. But what is important is that we harness our efforts to reduce these asymmetries. And that is what I think the Model UN, through your deliberations, and through the leadership you will provide to generations to come, set out to do, to reduce the inequalities, reduce the disparities, through debate, through diplomacy, through innovation, through change, and being bold to question why should someone have and someone else not have. Now the challenge, I believe, goes back to what I just mentioned, that we live in exponential times. So this challenge that you're taking on is on the backdrop of a changing foundation, changing assumptions. And in fact, the very fact that the Sustainable Development Goals target 2030, which is 13 years ahead, this in itself is a phenomenal challenge and something I believe in your futuristic committees, was it, or verticals, you should address. Because what is the world going to be in 2030? Are these Sustainable Development Goals, as they are articulated today, even going to be relevant in 13 years? The world is going to change, it's going to be dynamic. And therefore, the challenge to the future leaders of this country, of this world, is around adapting to change simultaneously with attacking these challenges. Change is broadly driven by technology today, and that is where I feel I could share a few thoughts which you could take on for further debate. We've heard of the industrial revolutions, and it is said that today we are embarking on the fourth industrial revolution. The first industrial revolution was around the steam engine, the internal combustion engine. The first time man was able to get some other form of energy to help him move around and move his goods around from place to place. The steam engine which drove trains and ships and so on. The next industrial revolution came around in the late 19th century with the mechanizing of manufacturing, the distribution of labor and so on. The third industrial revolution was in the 50s onwards with the advent of computers, the advent of networking, and this industrial revolution took us all the way to the 90s or even into this millennium. Because not only was computing accelerated in terms of its power and impact, but also communication networks came in to connect these computers together to eventually form what we lovingly call the internet today, where information from all over the world can be accessed, can be processed, and you can speak to anybody, anywhere, anytime, virtually. And the fact that the power of a computer is now available on a mobile phone has further pluralized the power of computing to the furthest extremities of humanity. Today, 5 billion people have a mobile phone. And that's, I think, a proud achievement for this world. That 5 billion out of the 6-something billion world population has connectivity. And give it another year or two, these 5 billion people or more would have computing power in their hand, because the penetration of smartphones today is also increasing at an exponential rate. So all put together, what you would find is that at the end of the third industrial revolution, you have a connected world, potentially a connected, intelligent, smart world, where even the poorest of people would have access to a mobile computing device. The fourth industrial revolution, which we are supposed to be embarking on today, takes things into an all-new realm with the advent of artificial intelligence, machine learning, where machines would do most of what we do today much better than how we could do it. And that would really question what we should be doing in the future, what the future leaders should craft for this world, because machines would be taking over most of the regular tasks that we engage in today. It will change labor distribution, it will change the priorities for what man versus machine distribution of work would involve. It also encompasses robotics, it encompasses concepts like augmented reality, virtual reality, big data. I'll talk about this a little bit down the line. It also encompasses the cloud. Now, what is the cloud? It's a sort of amorphous computing layer which goes one level beyond the internet, where the entire power of processing of information and of data is global, amorphous, has no single physical location. So this means that the infrastructure, in order to create a single world which is very equal in the raw material which drives the economies of this world, is going to soon be a reality. Because the cloud means that you can access the power of computing anywhere. The fact that robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning is becoming cheaper and cheaper, and today you know that something like a Google Home or a Alexa bot is $100. It'll be $10 in the next 2 years. So with pricing and scale coming down, artificial intelligence again will become very, very affordable, even to the poorest people on this earth. Now, while all this sounds fantastic, technology has its downsides as well. And that is, again, what you future leaders need to deliberate on. You're all probably users and advanced users, even more so than myself, of all these technologies. But you have to be always aware of the downside of what these technologies can bring in terms of invasion, in terms of disruption, in terms of distraction in our human lives, because we will always remain human. And we must separate ourselves as humans from these machines, which are there to help us and not to control us. So is there then an opportunity for the future leaders such as yourself to discerningly pick the strong elements of these wonderful technologies? Wonderful, why? Because they are plural. Wonderful, why? Because they are inclusive, potentially inclusive, meaning affordable, available to as many people as possible. They are not exclusive. So if you have an inclusive raw material in your hand, and it has all-pervasive power, and it reaches all geographies and most populations, then you have a powerful tool. And with that tool, you can carry out all the initiatives, the futuristic, world-shaping initiatives that you will debate, craft, and think of. Because there's a pipe, if I were to call it that. There's a network, there's reach to every single human on this planet. The downside then is the fact that these technologies, on the flip side, dehumanize us. And you would all know the downside of how technology takes us away from family, takes us away from simple joys of conversation even. Time we should be spending on building human relationships and so on. But this is what future leaders, as opposed to future followers, will need to think of. Because future leaders need to lead humanity, and lead not only in advancing humanity on the technology dimensions and making change, but also on the human dimensions as well. Now, if I were to spend a little time on disasters and humanitarian situations or crises, because the topic here is also about reinvigorating humanitarianism. And humanitarianism, I've already spoken about it on a broad sense of bringing humanity in this fast-paced, changing, exponentially changing world. But equally, we need to react quickly when there are humanitarian crises or situations. Now, I believe that a humanitarian crisis is simply an acute version of an asymmetry which could be very generic. Why acute? It happens at a moment when we are least prepared for it. Prepared for it in terms of equipment or facilitate, but also in terms of our preparedness to redistribute our resources to bridge an asymmetry which becomes very painful suddenly. So, for example, a flood, an earthquake, conflict, and so on. The critical success factors in this kind of situation, in my reading, range from preparedness to prevention to response, how you respond to it, how you mitigate the impact of such an acute asymmetry, and how you recover from it. Last but not least, how you put in place a sustainable, long-term solution which brings dignity to those who are impacted. So these are 6 pillars of addressing from preparedness all the way to sustainable solutions and dignity for those affected in the case of acute asymmetries such as natural disasters, epidemics, and so on. Now match this against the technologies, if I may just run through them once again, and challenge yourself, not during this conference, but when you go back home, on these 6 phases of a humanitarian crisis or situation, and how can these new technologies make things much better on each of these dimensions. How could you increase the immediacy of your response? How could the world reach quickly to the place or the person who has been affected? How would you improve the targeting or the specificity or relevance of what you deliver in terms of humanitarian assistance to the right person at the right time, so that humanitarian assistance is not wasted, spread across people who don't really need it. So targeting and delivery of specific humanitarian assistance. Also, how would you establish the reach and scale to the furthest points of this globe and to impact the largest number of affected people? Now match these requirements against the emerging technologies. First, connectivity, ubiquitous connectivity, both terrestrial, meaning wireless or wired mobile phones or fixed terminals, whatever it is. The ubiquity of communications is in your hands. It's a pliable tool which you have today. Also, satellite connectivity has improved leaps and bounds to be able to connect, again, at low cost anywhere in the world on a multimedia basis. Smart and affordable devices. Like I said, smartphones will be affordable to a majority of the world's population in the near future. And that's a trend that nobody would be able to stop. The Internet of Things. An interesting development through the 4th Industrial Revolution, where you could plant sensors, again, a couple of US cents each, in nearly everything all over the world. So an earth slip, a flood, a change in weather pattern, a change in soil condition, the increase in concentration of a particular virus or whatever it is. All these electronic sensors could be planted all over the globe on cattle, on livestock, in the jungles, in water, on earth, and so on. So the IoT phenomenon, all connected to this internet and thereby to the cloud. Imagine the amount of information that is being accumulated for global consumption. And that is what we know as big data. And you combine big data with the latest analytical methods or advanced analytics and computing power. And what do you get? The capability to predict exactly what is going to happen and where. You would know well in advance of an earth slip. You would know well in advance of a flash flood. You would know the weather patterns. You would know everything about how the world and the human being will react or interact in the day ahead. Even news clips, social media chatter is today being analyzed to predict conflict. You could predict, and the computing power, which is exponential increase in its availability as well as in its capability, could today, even today, predict when conflict would happen, in what form and where, purely by assimilating all the information widely available on the internet. So this is the power of this new world. The power of robotics, again, unmanned aerial vehicles or UAVs or drones. These devices could access disaster situations which otherwise could not be accessed. They could deliver goods, food, medicine. They could carry medical equipment. They could carry an ECG machine to be operated completely remotely. And when I say could, it means this already happens, and the costs, again, are de-escalating to a level that it's no longer an exclusive facility. These would be inclusive. Artificial intelligence, augmented reality, the ability to image a remote area by satellite and to build a simulation of a disaster through virtual reality, to train people to react and carry out remote operations. These are all phenomenal strengths that you future leaders can garner in the quest for reinvigorating humanitarianism. So these technologies all sound great, but as I said, there's always the downside of technology. And I believe that in fact, technology has underdelivered. While all these great innovations are around us, take your own personal experience with technology. I'm sure a day doesn't pass without you marveling on something new. Oh, did you hear that? Now I can do this. Wow, this is what's happening. Each time you do that, just question, can this same technology be used to reinvigorate humanitarianism as well? Next, ask yourself, has it been done? And I guess 9 out of 10 times, the answer would be no. That while we get busy and excited and develop great new ways of doing things, we do not think of, can this very same technology, very same method be used to do something else? My mind goes back 15 years when Dialog was designing this was not in the smartphone era, in the old feature phone era, designing a dating app, which was basically around matching profiles of people, which are transmitted on SMS. That, wonder whether you even remember what SMS is, but you upload your profile on SMS and then it matches. It's a dating app. Then came a dengue epidemic in 2003. And it crossed our mind at that time that the very same architecture which we had created for a dating app could be used for a blood donor matching service. And that while the dating app could connect a lot of youngsters very fast, in the face of epidemic, we could use this to connect donors. I'm just giving you one simple example, but nearly every technology, whether it's social media, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's the latest gadget, always think, can this do more? With a small adaptation, can it be used not only to make money or not only to create enjoyment, but could it be used to change lives? And the answer, from my experience, is always yes. Finally, I feel that also for sustainability and dignity, all these solutions need to end up with a proper business model. And again, I'll leave you with one example, and that is in the field of insurance. If you take the developed world, America, for example, where everyone is insured for health. I'm giving you a first world example. Now, in whose interest is it to prevent disease? In whose interest is it to ensure that every citizen wears a Fitbit or equivalent and goes to the gym every day? It is the insurance company. So that business model can be also translated into the developing world. Already we have seen in many countries, including Sri Lanka, the concept of micro-insurance, meaning bringing financial inclusion to the insurance industry, where the poorest of the poor would insure themselves against accidental death or illness at a small value per day. In Sri Lanka, I think it's just 2 rupees per day for 1 million rupees cover. Now the difference is that that very individual could never pay an annual premium, but through technology enabling him to pay or her to pay on a per day basis, this person gets insured. Now this community joins the insured community, the market segment. I'm talking business here, because end of the day, sustainability is around economic, social, environmental development. And there has to be an economic angle in the long run. So what happens when this segment joins the community of insured people in a country is that insurance companies, again, would assist in the humanitarian efforts of keeping these segments healthy, safe, and away from danger. That's a cycle. Likewise for farmers, crop insurance. In Africa, large segments of farmers subscribe to daily crop insurance, supported by IoT-based weather information, and so on. So these are business models where insurance companies, telecommunication providers, and the farmer all make a livelihood. And it is dignified, and it is sustainable, and it is humanitarian, because it would increase the preparedness for any natural calamity. I'll leave you with one thought that, like I mentioned earlier, the technology around us is transforming our lives, changing at an ever-increasing pace, leaves us with very little time to spend with family, building relationships, and indeed, the future humanitarian calamities, even before 2030, might be around extreme loneliness, depression, increasing suicide rates, and dehumanization of human beings. That's something for you to think about as well. Because at the end of the day, humanitarianism, if it is to really deliver, has to come from the heart. And we must use our heart, whatever we do. Mother Teresa didn't have to boost her message on Facebook to disseminate or distribute her message of love. She didn't have to use the internet or big data or IoT to create a great wave of change, helping people to help each other with love. And that, I think, is very important for all of us during these times of exponential change, when the very foundations on which we live, the assumptions are changing every day, but one thing won't change: the humanity and the power of what our emotions, our sharing, and our love can do for other human beings. I wish you all the very best for this conference and look forward to seeing the results of your efforts to rewrite how the world should work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hans Vijayasuriya. Could you please remain on stage? We would also like to invite the principal of the Overseas School of Colombo, Mr. Phil Jocelyn, to proceed with the induction of the Secretariat for Comun 2018. Starting off with the Secretary General, Mr. Amanda Amarvansha.
The President of the General Assemblies, Mitsuka Telekaratna.
Head of Administration, Mr. Dino Hetiarachi.
Thank you, Dr. Hans and Mr. Jocelyn. You may now take your seat. We would now like to call upon stage Dr. Nihal De Silva, the Dean of the International Institute of Health Sciences, to address the Assembly.
Good morning, everybody. I don't think I can add anything more to what has already been said by our chief guest. It was a very impressive speech, sir. moved me quite a bit. But let me have a few minutes to express my thoughts. The world with 7.5 billion people today is in turmoil, despite the United Nations being in its 73rd year of existence. Presently, Sri Lanka is also in turmoil. The turmoil and conflicts relate ultimately to visible overcrowding, disparate equality, and competition for survival following Darwinian observations. Tolerance, a virtue to overcome these visible quantities, is grossly deficient. So then what can we as individuals do about it? We can be members of a smart generation, a smart revolution. The scale of the problems seems beyond our individual capacities to solve. But yet, we have had Nelson Mandela's, Martin Luther King's, Mother Teresa's, Bill Gates among us. They were like us at one time, not knowing their future with certainty. Our domains too can remain small, but our example and effort will be a beacon to the next generation. I represent a healthcare manpower training and education facility called the International Institute of Health Sciences. It was founded because there was a great deficiency in trained manpower in this arena. In 15 years, we have become the leading institution in this arena and will soon be expanding into medicine too, in affiliation with the University of Aberdeen in Scotland. On the way, we have produced a whole crop of smart people just by giving them opportunities that others could not provide. A mini smart revolution, as it were. Opportunities to find fulfilling work, personal satisfaction, personal growth, and to introduce new ideas, and even to make a name for oneself. Opportunities are plenty. One of our students is now with Doctors Without Borders, Medicine Sans Frontiers, as Chief Operating Theatre Nurse. He was a nurse from Gaul. One of our directors is the manager for European health programs for refugees with the International Committee of the Red Cross. These are positions of high professionalism, great responsibility, and leadership. Again, the product of a smart revolution. Both the International Committee of the Red Cross and Medicine Sans Frontiers are humanitarian organizations that have been separately awarded the Nobel Prize for Peace. They are NGOs working outside of government, most of their funding being from voluntary donations from ordinary people like you and me, generously giving to very worthy humanitarian causes. Disaster relief, hunger relief, basic sanitation, clean water, basic education facilities are areas where we can all help in some way for a better world. Our students at IIHS volunteer at a home for the mentally challenged and also at another aged care center. We all can play a part, small or big, and we can start young. You all today here are at the threshold of making decisions, taking you down pathways of adventure, study, positive and negative experiences, discovering your inner selves, and finding platforms to commit your future to. I could sense the energy and the enthusiasm this morning as I was one of the first to arrive and watched everybody being all excited about the event. It is an exciting time of your life, and you all are blessed with a great environment with the Overseas School of Colombo as a springboard. And those of you inclined to go to the direction of the biological sciences, please consider IIHS and the University of Aberdeen pathways for biomedical sciences, nursing, physiotherapy, and medicine. These are pathways with great international opportunities in a future that is increasingly based on evidence-based science, but yet needing a human touch and tolerance. Good luck to you all and your conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nihal. You may take a seat. We would now like to invite the Secretariat to proceed with the induction of the Executive Committee of Comun 2018. Starting off with the non-chairs, Head of Operations, Tanushka Vijay-Singha.
The Deputy Heads of Operations, Harini Srinivasan and Sanya Subasinghe.
Deputy Heads of Administration, Hershika Vijay Surya, Mandri Amarasekara, Takesha Jayaratna.
The Head of Community Service, Heshan Lianavaru.
Deputy Head of Community Service, Jivanta Indruva.
The Head of Technology, Anuda Veerasinghe.
Head of Media, Theo Belmas.
And the Deputy Head of Media, Vinara Pathirana.
Moving on to the chairs. Head table of the Third General Assembly. Vice Chair, Pankuri Kaptial. Chair, Soja Rajakaruna. Vice President, Janek De Silva. Head table of the Fourth General Assembly. Vice Chair, Virat Dialvis. Chair, Hussein Esufali. Vice President, Danidu Vithanavasan.
The Head Table of the United Nations Assembly on Drugs and Crime, Vice Chair, Ramudi Samarasekara. Chair, Tanishq Mahunathan. And the Vice President, Maneth Kulatunga. The International Court of Justice, Vice President Felix Diemer. And President Isuru Abesekura.
Head table of the Futuristic Economic and Social Council, Vice President Sahas Gunasekara. President Senit Vanigasuriya. Head table of the Futuristic Security Council, Vice President Patrick de Kretzer. Last but not the least, President Anish Fonseca.
We would like to thank everyone for gracing this assembly with their presence.
Please be seated as the Secretary General will officially declare session open.
Good morning and welcome. Dear delegates, esteemed faculty advisors, distinguished administrative staff at the Overseas School of Colombo, and our Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Hans Vijayasuriya. First and foremost, I would like to sincerely lend my heartfelt gratitude towards everyone present here today, as your individual contributions are the facilitating force driving this year's re-simulation of the Colombo Model United Nations Conference for the 24th consecutive year. And on behalf of the entire Executive Committee of Comun 2018, we wish to convey our appreciation for your faith in our abilities and wholeheartedly accept this honor and responsibility entrusted upon us to elevate Comun's already prestigious history to even greater and newer heights. Moving forth, I have two questions that I would like to ask from all those gathered here. What is the true purpose of MUN? And why is it important to engage and participate in MUN? These two seemingly simple questions are directed at all those present, for it is of utmost importance that we understand for our own selves what and where our true motivations lie as participants within Comun 2018. From where I stand, the response to the first question remains quite clear. The purpose in modeling the United Nations within global student conferences like Comun are to promote and enshrine the importance of the founding principles that shaped and birthed the United Nations in 1945. The UN as an organization was established following the horrors of the Second World War on the tenets of fostering global peace, intent through global diplomacy, whilst holding human rights in the highest possible esteem, and respecting the socio-political, religious, economic, and geographical diversity. MUN acts as the gateway of understanding and introducing those fundamental ideas of the United Nations to students very much like us across the world. Therein lies my personal motivation for participating and engaging with the very concept of MUN, because I, much like some of the younger faces here, joined the MUN circuit as a private delegate in 2011 because at the time, being at the tender age of 11, I was too young to join our school's delegation at the time. And like the majority of novices, initially I too was afraid and intimidated to speak. because of the potential for verbal retaliation if I said something potentially incorrect. Thus, I barely raised my placard thrice till about break. All of which changed, might I remind you, once I encountered my brother in the cafeteria and through a few helpfully phrased suggestive coercive threats involving some potential kicks, he managed to motivate me to be confident and urge me to speak, and speak freely at that. Whether it meant asking a POI, making a statement during speakers list, anything, just speak. And so I did, partially to avoid the consequences. On that fine day, my brother taught me a very valuable lesson. A lesson I hope that I can impress on at least some of you today. Because we need not be afraid of anyone else out there. As our largest challenger, both in the MUN circuit and in other aspects, is our own selves, the limits and constraints we put upon ourselves. Therefore, overcoming our fears, our own fears, is the first step in realizing that you have the same chance of success as the most experienced delegate out there. Ladies and gentlemen, that is part of the learning we undergo when participating in MUN. Understanding that we must strive for success, while realizing that on the path to it, we learn how to address our failures and mistakes. I can confidently state that choosing to speak that day arguably changed some part of my life's trajectory, because it allowed me to possess a broadening awareness of the global problems we face in our world today. Problems that range from the ongoing Rohingya crisis in Myanmar, causing a global refugee crisis, the financial markets facing the volatility of the cryptocurrency market, probing the issues of corruption in states through illicit drug trafficking, the repercussions of global warming, and questioning the legality for wars. All of these issues, and much more, are the exact problems that Comun 2018 is hoping to address over the course of the following 3 days, through our 6 esteemed councils, including 2 of which are futuristic committees, like Mitsuka said, have never been simulated together, ever in Sri Lanka. And for the first time in Comun's history, simulating a brand new GA, the United Nations Assembly on Drugs and Crime, with the executive committee that we have. The capability of our executive committee has allowed us to create the most comprehensive list of committees that allow us to deal with our topic. And that, the executive committee as a whole believed United Nations, not just MUN, has lost that initial goal of solution building aimed at preventing human suffering and chaos, only for the UN to appear around needless rhetoric, causing political stagnation, only for Comun 2018, through our theme of reinvigorating humanitarianism, intends to address the humanitarian aspects of these problems, the human effects of all these global problems. Because for far too long, the United Nations has been too busy with dealing with political stagnation, dealing with the political repercussions, instead of addressing the human aspects of these problems. That is what we as an executive committee felt was as important, felt that that was as one of the founding tenets of the UN, was as important in addressing the human and social dimensions affecting individuals, families, and communities spread across the world that are being physically affected by these global issues, rather than continuing unnecessary propagation of political entrenchment causing continued and unnecessary human suffering. To end off that train of thought, I'd like to leave you with a quote from one of my favorite political figures, Che Guevara. "Shoot me covered, you are only going to kill a man." This quote symbolizes something, which is an idea is more than one individual. An idea lives further than one individual or one community. An idea cannot be killed. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our responsibility. Over the next 3 days, our responsibility is to find innovative solutions to global calamitous problems, and try and find a way to address these. Because that is ultimately what the United Nations is about. finding effective solutions, effective long-term solutions that can actively address the problems that face our world. So, I would like to conclude by thanking you all for your kind patience in persevering through my speech, and I hope sincerely that you could find something of use that struck you within the message that I shared with you today. With that being said, with the powers vested in me as the Secretary General of Comun 2018, I would like to formally declare the session open.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. I would now like to call upon the President of the General Assemblies, Ms. Ratna, to disseminate the assemblies.
To start off with, the International Court of Justice, can the head table come forward? Delegates from the International Court of Justice, please stand up. Please follow your respective head table of the committee room. The head table of the Futuristic Economic and Social Council. Delegates from FICASOC, please follow your head table to the respective committee room. The head table of the Futuristic Security Council. The delegates of FSC, please stand up. Assemble and follow your head table to the respective committee room. The head table of the United Nations Assembly on Drugs and Crime. The delegates of UNADC. Delegates of UNADC, please leave the auditorium now. The head table of the 4th General Assembly. Delegates of the United Nations Assembly on Drugs and Crime, please follow your Vice President. Delegates from GF4. Delegates of GF4, please follow your head table and go to the respective committee room. Delegates of GA3, you all will have to head out with your head table. We need to arrange committee for you all, so it will take time. You all will take your committee picture until then. So follow your head table, they guide you through. Thank you.